Well, this kind of sucks. Welcome, Duke fans, episode 591 of the DBR podcast, the Duke Basketball Roundup. I'm Jason Evans. I'm here with Donald Wine. Donald, how you doing this morning?
This sucks. I think you summed it up
There we
perfectly.
go. There we go. That's it. Duke band, play us out. Take us home.
Take us home.
I'm glad we can joke. We're here on the morning after the Blue Devils lost to UNC by 9 points. That was a really frustrating game because we were kind of like I think it was tied at like 22, about 10 minutes left or so, or like 12 minutes, 12 minutes into the first half. Looked like it was going to be a back and forth one of these kind of contests. And Carolina stretched it out and it never got stretched back.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We made the first basket of the game. And then we had the lead for about 16 seconds.
Yep.
And that was the last time we had the lead, was about 30 seconds into the game. It just, I can we, before we get into the headlines and stuff, can we just start with, I think, the main thing from this? Everyone, and we can just very quickly, everybody that talked in the post-game press conference, Jon Scheyer, Jared McCain, Jeremy Roach, all talked about effort and energy. That was the main theme of this game. I know we'll talk a lot about that, but I have to say that
hey, that's my entire bad.
that it's everything they focused on. And I think the reason why it sums this up is that in this game, in this rivalry, all of us need no, reason to not be amped up about this, right? You and I were excited about this game. We did two previews on this game because it's that important to us. It's that important to everyone who's listening to this. It's important to everybody who's a part of this rivalry, from the people on the team to the fans to, again, neighbors. I was dressed in all Duke blue yesterday. I went to the Marquette Georgetown game with some friends.
Well, that was by the way, Marquette. Well, they mollywopped Georgetown. Wow.
Smoked them, right? But everyone in the gym was focused on our game. There was a lot of Go Tar Heels, yelling in my direction, which, again, this is something that transcends even the rivalry. Everyone is invested in this. Everyone is hyped up about this. So for us to come out flat really, really, really sucks.
Yeah, look, you and I could probably spend another 20 minutes talking about effort, energy, intensity, and all
that. Of course.
Let's wait. We have a pattern that we follow on these things, and we will adhere to the pattern come, rain or shine, win or lose. And the pattern says we begin with the headlines. Chris Bynum had this one. And by the way, we got some spicy emails. We got some very spicy emails.
Some were not for radio.
No. Chris Bynum gave us Duke loses 5-on-8 on the road to UNC. Chris definitely felt that the free throw shooting, the performance of the referees left something to be desired. I don't disagree with him. I'm not sure that this is not one of those games I'm going to put all the way on the refs. And Duke needs to learn to adjust to how the refs are calling the game. But Chris is not wrong that at times it felt like 5-on-8 out there. Ken Swanner gave us McCain gets beat by heels. Rest of Duke team no shows. Again, I'm not. That's pretty harsh. I'm not so sure I would go that far. I feel like Jared McCain. I'm sorry. I feel like Mark Mitchell played pretty hard. Jeremy Roach certainly played hard. Caleb Foster was okay at times. I'm not going to say that the whole team didn't no show, but it did at times feel like it was Jared McCain against the entire Tar Heel team. Josh Levinson. This is a clever one. Now you have to listen to this one and pay attention to it, folks. He says, Devils don't need a clue. It was Bacot and Ingram in the Dean Dome with a sledgehammer and blowtorch.
That was my favorite one.
Man, I thought that was brilliant.
That was brilliant.
And by the way, the brilliant part about it was by saying Bacot and Ingram with a sledgehammer and blowtorch, it was perfect pairing because Armando Bacot pounded us and Harrison Ingram was on fire. So I thought, again, Josh, that was first rate, baby. Eric Bishop gave us a lot of D's. You ready for the D? We got a couple here coming up with a lot of D's. Eric Bishop said, Devils D disorganized in Dean Dome. John Grantland gave us Dean Dome doomed. Dominant defense decimates dismal Devils. Wow. I'm going to read that one again because I barely got through it. Dean Dome doomed. Dominant defense decimates dismal Devils. I mean, that was impressive by John. Richard George gave us Devils offer no defense to UNC claim of ACC superiority. Yeah, this was a battle for first place in the ACC, and Richard is absolutely right. UNC gets to rule the roost for the moment. And the last one I had, and this is an interesting one, Donald. Jamie Keffer. It's a long one. He said this: disappointment in the Dean Dome. Duke's sophomoric effort made Devils no match for Carolina's intensity and discipline. And he pointed out sophomoric effort. That word has a double meaning here, because Jamie was pointing out that Duke's sophomores, in his opinion, did not come to play. And preview, when we get to the bad, I am going to talk about Cal Filipowski and Tyrese Proctor. But we're going to do the good first, Donald. Let me start with you. I'm just going to pluck something out of the air. I'm just going to guess that you're probably going to start with Jared McCain and the good. Am I right?
Well, here's the thing. I want to start with Jared McCain, but I want to do it as in kind of a group fashion, because this is a game that we had 3 guys score 20 points. Very rarely do you lose a basketball game where 3 guys score 20 points each, led by Jared McCain.
Hey, wait, by the
Jared
way, do you know
McCain.
the last time we did it? Do you know the last time Duke had 3 guys score 20 points?
No, I do not.
2022 against Syracuse. Mark Williams, Adrian Griffin, and I mean AJ Griffin, and shoot, I forget who. I think it was Flip, but it was
Okay.
a Syracuse game where Flip and Mark Williams wouldn't have been on
It
the same
wouldn't
team
have been
together.
Flip. It would have been Flip.
No,
Must have been Paulo.
I forget who the third one was, but it was one of those games. It was one of those games where we were just bombing away from 3 against Syracuse. So
Yeah, it probably was Paulo in that year.
it was Paulo. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But yes, 3 guys scored 20 points each, led by Jared McCain, 23 points, 11 rebounds, 2 steals, 1 assist. And Jason, when we talk about some of the things that went wrong in this game, I can say, I start by saying, in the form of Jared McCain, very rarely, it is very easy for a freshman to get lost in the moment of this rivalry. Jared McCain was not lost. He was very much ready for this game. He was very much ready for this moment. And I appreciate the fact that he came and he busted his butt on both ends of the floor for the entirety of the stretch that he was in the game. I thought he was the best player on the team. At times, he was the best player on the court. And that's, again,
Yeah.
In a rivalry that's loaded with stars, he was the best player on the court at times in this basketball game. And I thought he shouldered the responsibility that he had very, very well, which, again, is not something you expect to ask of a freshman. But I didn't ask Jared McCain to do this, and he did it anyway. So hats off to Jared McCain for how he played.
Yeah, and you mentioned you mentioned the stats: 23 points, 11 rebounds, 2 steals. I wanted to add a couple other stats to that. He only had 1 turnover, and biggest one to me was he played a team leading 38 minutes, more than 38 minutes in this game.
That's been a trend lately. The fact
Yeah.
that we talk about Jeremy Roach has been getting minutes, but once Jeremy Roach went out with the ankle injury, Jared McCain's been the guy really towards the top in terms of minutes played.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that I thought you briefly alluded to this. I thought McCain played well on defense as well. He was really creative. Look, the offense is the thing we're going to focus on with him, because he was really creative in finding seams through that Carolina defense, and that Carolina defense was tough to pierce. He was the guy who was figuring out ways to get into dangerous places. He is clearly more than just a long range shooter. I mean, we've known this for a while, but he is just expanding his game each time Duke goes out on the floor and making himself more and more dangerous. He took 12 2-point field goals in this game. It's the first game all year where he shot more than 7 2-point field goals. So, I mean, that's a big leap. 7 was the previous high. This game, he took 12 2-point field goals. We know he can hit threes, but he's really showing now that he can hit twos as well. And this was his 3rd 20-plus point game in Duke's last 5 games. I thought McCain was absolutely outstanding. And I want to segue from him to the other guy that I thought had a really, really nice game on offense, and that's Jeremy Roach. Seemed healthy, seemed assertive for the first time. Yeah, not the assertive, but the healthy part. Healthy for the first time in a while, but seemed his assertive self, especially in the first half. I think it was crafty, like McCain was. Found ways to score, found ways. I'm not a huge fan of the mid-range jumper, but when Jeremy Roach is finding his way into the lane and taking that, that almost that foul line kind of jumper that he gets, dude, I'll take that all day, because he hits that thing like 65+% of the time. And he and McCain were the clear offensive highlights for this game. I mean, we did score 84 points in this contest. That's enough to win for Duke virtually.
Almost every game. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's no way Duke is even competitive in this game without Jared McCain and Jeremy Roach being as creative as they were on offense. And it was their creativity. It was not the passing of their teammates, which is something we'll get to in the bat.
I think another guy who I think deserves kudos for how he played for large stretches of this game, Mark Mitchell. He wasn't as big a factor on offense as we've seen in previous weeks. He's had a couple of 20-point games, but still he had 11 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks. Again, he asserts himself on both ends of the floor. He was our leading block guy, block shot getter. And just on defense, again, he makes it where they have to alter their shots and have to really think about how they approach the basket because he is so great at defending inside the paint. I thought that was great, and I think on offense even he picked his spots. Yeah, he missed his first 3 since December, right? Which is something that we've been talking about his 3-point shooting failures, but he went a whole month without missing a 3. He finally misses one, but even still, it was taken in the flow of the offense. I think he's focused a lot on trying to find those open spaces and letting his teammates get him the ball in those spaces so that he can make something happen. He had a couple of, dunks or layups that were kind of wide open where he was able to find an open space and someone got him the ball and all he had to do was finish it. So I'm really, really at least focused on the fact that Mark Mitchell has found what I feel like his groove is. And he's not trying to be the guy who's going for 25, 30 points a game.
Right.
He's just trying to, fit into the offense where he can. And I think his hustle is where he's most lethal, right? He can get you on offense and get you on defense, but really just about the guys that he's keeping in front of you and also just his motor. I think his motor is the thing that needs to continue to press on as we move along this season.
So let me get to a couple of other things in the good that don't relate specifically to offense. I wanted to mention that we battled them even pretty much on the boards. We did not let Armando Bacot had 4 offensive rebounds, but for the most part, we didn't let them kill us on the offensive boards. And that had been a concern of Duke fans. I mean, I guess it's good that we battled them so evenly. It's worth noting that Carolina battled us evenly on the boards while only really sending 2 or 3 guys to the glass for the most part. It was Ingram and Bacot who did almost all the rebounding for UNC, and as a result, they were able to leak guys out, especially on the defensive boards. Leak guys out so that they could get out in the fast break faster than Duke was. We were sending, we were pretty much sending 4, maybe even 5 guys to the glass, and Carolina was really only sending 3. But at least we did not get beat on the boards. And then I wanted to mention that I thought on defense, Tyrese Proctor, Caleb Foster, and also Roach and McCain each took turns playing RJ Davis. In fact, there were sometimes that Mark Mitchell got switched on to him as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a really nice job on the ACC's leading scorer. He had to work. RJ Davis had to work hard for his points. And we didn't just let him pass out of double teams to wide open teammates all game long and get a bunch of assists. You tell me that Duke's going to hold RJ Davis to 5 of 14 shooting. And I tell you that I think Duke should have a really good shot in this game. Now, I didn't know that Armando Bacot and Harrison Ingram would both have their best games of the season at the same time. I mean, who knew that Armando Bacot would have as many points in this game as in his last 4 games combined? I mean, come on. But I did want to, in the good, mention that I thought that Proctor and Foster especially, and also the other guys that helped them out, we did a nice job on RJ Davis, who, coming into the game, all of us would have said was the big problem in playing Carolina.
Jason, when we talk in our previews, I say previews plural, you mentioned a couple of stats that we said that if Duke does this right, then we're in a position to win this ball game. You mentioned, holding RJ to under his season average. They did that. You mentioned the rebounding battle, keeping it close. As you mentioned, they only lost it, 35-34. I'm happy with that. Second chance points. Duke wins 16-14. We said if we could be better with them in second chance points, that means we're getting the basket more and we're creating more opportunities and limiting theirs. I thought we did well there. Points in the paint. Duke had 54 points in the paint.
We dominated them. It's crazy.
We dominated them in the paint. UNC only had 36. And when you look at these stats, and you look at the fact that we've barely mentioned Kyle Filipowski. He had 22 points, and I know we're going to talk about him in the bad. I do want to mention the good that, again, there was 3 guys that scored 20 points each. Kyle Filipowski was one of them. He had 5 rebounds, 1 block. And the points in the paint, we dominated them in the paint. We got the second chance points. We held our own on rebounds. We limited the best scorer in the ACC to under his season average. What could have gone wrong, right? When you look at these stats, you kind of go, what happened with Duke to cause them to lose this basketball game? And it wasn't those areas that there was a point of emphasis on, because I thought they did well in those areas.
All right, so we're not going to get into what went wrong yet. That's coming up in a moment, but I do got a couple other things I want to mention in the good before we take a break and get to the bad. This may seem a little counterintuitive, but I want to mention our poise. I don't think Duke seemed overwhelmed by the moment. I don't think we panicked when we got down 8, 10, 13. I think we may have been down as much as 15 at one point. I thought we largely kept our cool. We kept on trying to fight back. Look, there are intangible aspects of this game, hustle and energy, where Duke was clearly lacking. But I don't think we let the bright lights of the moment overwhelm us. And especially guys like McCain and Foster, who are first-timers in this kind of atmosphere, in this kind of game. I thought they didn't seem, again, overwhelmed by the moment. Again, there are a lot of intangibles. Donald, you talked about the stats that went our way, or the stats that did not go poorly. And yet this was a game where I don't think Duke was ever within less than 8 points in the entire second half. I may have missed it, but we cut it to 8 a couple times, but we could not get it less than that. But I didn't see this Duke team panic, and they are still a young team. And so I'm going to take something positive out of that. And then my last thing, and then I'll let you have the final say in the good. I thought somehow playing on the road against a team that everyone says is a strong national title contender, a team that has dudes 3 to 5 years older than all but 1 or 2 of Duke's players. I mean, Cormac Ryan, they pointed out, is 25. A Carolina team that had twice as many assists, twice as many steals, had a key player in Harrison Ingram play his best game of his career, had Armando Bacot, potential All-American, play his best game of his season. Duke only lost by 9. I mean, this game felt like an outlier from Ingram and Bacot. It felt like an outlier for Tyrese Proctor. And Duke only lost by 9. I feel like we can learn from this, and we can really put them in their place when they come to Durham. I said in the pregame that I was not confident. I was pessimistic about Duke at Carolina. Coming out of this game, as silly as it sounds, I'm pretty optimistic about our odds of beating them in Durham. We're highly likely to see this UNC team three times this year, I think. I think it's pretty darn likely that we're going to play them 3 times. And there's no way either team's going to sweep all 3 games. That's just not happening. These teams are too good to have any team sweep them 3 times. So if we have to lose one, this is the time and the place to do it. Do it in, early February. Don't do it in March. That's my last good.
I disagree with that, only the sense that I want to win the
want to sweep
right?
them. I know.
I want to sweep everything, right? I don't
talking
care if it's
logically, not from
badminton.
the
I don't
heart,
care
my
if it's
friend.
chess. I don't care if it's supermarket sweep. I want to beat them. But having said that, I think I agree with you, right? Like the poise was there. Like it wasn't that there were guys shying away from the moment, right? Like it wasn't guys playing scared. Even when they were down, they were still fighting. And I think the one thing is we've seen our team down quite a bit this year, and we've seen that fight continue. So I like the fact that it continued here. And when you look at this game, right, it doesn't do us any service, right, as Duke fans, but neutral fans probably saw what they thought was a really, really good game between 2 teams, and they're probably leaving that game thinking, yeah, UNC is really good, but Duke is good too. And I think that does us no service, because we're talking about that in a loss. But this team can be a very good basketball team. We see it there, and I saw some of that potential last night during the game. Obviously, there's some things we got to work on and make it where we can go from good to great to elite.
There you go. All right, Donald, I have 3 pages of notes, and I've only gone through one of them. So it's time for us to take a break. There's a lot to talk about in the bad. This was, we're trying to put a positive spin on things. This is not a game that the Blue Devils are going to want to think about a lot other than to learn from it. We are going to take a quick break. On the other side, energy, effort, intensity. We'll be talking about those things when we come back.
We're back from the break. As I mentioned, Donald, I wish there was a stat for 50-50 balls. I wish there was some way we could qualify.
I don't want to see it for this game.
There should be someone that'd be next generation stats. We need someone who like at a given moment pushes a button and go, that's a 50-50 ball. The ball's on the ground. Who's going to get this one? It's a rebound that's kind of a long rebound and been tapped around a little bit. Who's going to get this 50-50 ball? I wish we could track it. Although I kind of am glad we can't, because I'm pretty sure that Duke lost like 80 or 90% of the 50-50 balls last night.
I don't even know if it's that low. It might be higher than that. I can't remember one 50-50 ball that we ended up with.
Man, that ball that Harrison Ingram dove on the floor for and tossed out that led to a Cormac Ryan 3 from the corner. It was a 10-point game when that happened. There was about 6 minutes left. That play happened, and I just went, that's the game in a nutshell, and we're not going to win. UNC played harder. They played faster. They played with more energy than Duke the entire contest. I mean, it started from the very beginning. Literally every defensive rebound, they were off and running, and Duke was like, oh, wait, wow, what's that? Flying past me. Oh, it's a Carolina player who's about to get a layup. All that energy just made the game so much easier for them and so much harder for us. I could talk about this forever. You take it for a little bit, and then I'll come back to it.
Well, no, I have a lot of notes on this too, and I'm just thinking about the the post game press conference. I mentioned John Shire, Jeremy Roach, and Jared McCain were all the three people who spoke to the media.
Oh, they knew. Shire, they knew.
And they knew, and they all talked about it, right? But here's the thing, Jason. I'm going to just go back to the first point you made about the loose balls. John Shire led with the fact that the main story for him was the loose balls. He said, quote, as you look throughout the game, they were hungrier to get them, and it turned into, I'll have to go back and watch the film to see, but I bet close to 15, maybe even 20 points. That's a huge disparity. And again, if 50-50 balls, if you get those, especially on defense, you get those. Like you mentioned, there was one where it turned into a Cormac Ryan 3. That 3 doesn't happen if we have the ball.
Dude, there's going to be a Duke manager. I don't know which one it'll be, but there will be a Duke manager who spends his day today watching that game film. And I talked about the stat. They're going to be tracking those 50-50 balls and how many points they turned into for Carolina. I doubt John Shire will share it with us, but that stat exists in the mind of the Duke team.
And it just, again, it leads to all of these things, right? The effort, the energy, the intensity. UNC wanted this game more than we did. And when you have all these things go right, as we talked about in the good, that one thing, energy, effort, and intensity, was the one thing we said that needed to happen, that we figured we wouldn't have to worry about because it was a Duke UNC game, and it happened. There was one team that was hungrier than the others. They got almost every single loose ball. It turned into points that were the difference in this ball game. And again, when I just want to look at Jeremy Roach's comments too, before I go back to you, Jason. He just put simply, quote, we just got out-competed, out-toughed. It's very tough, especially in this rivalry. We got to come back Wednesday and get the win. Like, I know they're looking ahead to Wednesday, but the fact that he says that they were out-competed and out-toughed in this rivalry, that is the difference between winning and losing. Sometimes, Jason, it's not by 9 points. Sometimes it's by 2. Sometimes it's by 1. But that when you can't lead with that in a Duke UNC after or post-game presser and know that to be true, because if it is, then that means you didn't show up. And that's the real hurt in this, is that, like I said, we were ready. The fan base was ready. The players I thought were ready to play, and I thought they rose to the moment, but you can't get out competed in this rivalry.
Yeah. And the way that it translated into easy points for Carolina and difficult points for Duke. It felt to me, we talked about the fast breaks already and the way Carolina was able to get out and get easier opportunities than the Blue Devils did. But the other aspect of it was, it just felt to me like Duke was working its butt off for everything. Nothing came easy. And a lot of it is, I thought we were playing for the foul throughout much of the contest. Like, Duke guys would jump into the lane and expect the refs to bail them out. And I want to be clear, the refs were terrible and allowed way, way, way too much contact. But as a team, you have to adjust to
Roger
that.
Roger Ayers was in this game. Of course, once you read that on the stat sheet, you knew it was going to be a long night. But they should too.
Yeah. Look, there was a play. My buddy Eric Rothschild, who is a really smart observer of Duke basketball, sent me an email about this. the play where Armando Bacot sort of turned sideways and slammed his body into Kyle Filipowski, and the refs called nothing. Now Kyle sort of recovered from it, and as a result of it, had an open lane to the basket, and he dunked it. Great, fabulous for him. But that was an example of a play where it's ridiculous that no foul was called. Again, it was good for Duke that no foul was called, but it wasn't a play where the refs didn't blow their whistle because they saw that Filipowski had an advantage. They're like, oh, we'll let. They didn't blow their whistle because they weren't going to call huge contact like that as a foul. And the problem I had with it is that we saw Duke again and again and again try to play like the refs were going to bail them out, like the refs were going to call a foul. And you saw McCain do it. We saw Roach do it. We saw Kyle do it. We saw Ryan Young do it. We saw Mark Mitchell do it. They'd go into the lane, they'd get hacked, and nothing would get called. And again, I feel like the refs blew it. But at the same time, Duke needed to find a way to adjust to that. Because I feel like the refs were calling it the same way at both ends. But in the end, the free throw margin was the difference in this game. Carolina shot 25 free throws. Duke only shot 11. Carolina won by 9. Do you know how many more free throws they made than Duke? They made 9 more free throws than Duke did. How can a team attacking the basket the way Duke was attacking the basket only get 11 free throws? You mentioned Roger Ayers, but it's also Ron Groover and Brian O'Connell. We talked about, Duke shying from the moment. I think those guys shied from the moment. They were overwhelmed by the crowd. I heard from a number of people, by the way, that the crowd at Carolina was really, really impressed. Like one of the best crowds folks have ever heard at Carolina. And I think those refs were a little overwhelmed. They allowed an older and physically stronger UNC team to dictate the amount of contact that would be played in this game. And frankly, that's not the ref's job, is to dictate it, not to allow one team to pick the level and go, okay, that's how we're going to play. And I want to be clear again, I'm not putting this loss on the refs. Duke needed to find a way to adjust. But at the same time, man, that free throw disparity, the fact that Duke didn't shoot a free throw in the entire first half.
I was going to say UNC. I think UNC had 10 free throws before we attempted 1.
That's ridiculous, and it's unfair because Duke was playing a way that they know how to play, and the refs just said, "No, the rules are different this game, guys. Yeah, figure it out. We're not going to play this game the same way you've played every other basketball game in your life. If Armando Bacot throws his body into Kyle Filipowski, practically knocks him down, play on, guys. Keep going. If Jared McCain goes in the lane, if Ryan Young goes in the lane, gets sandwiched between 2 guys, and the ball pops out, play on. Figure out what's happening next."
It's the next play mentality. It's the next play mentality that's been the mantra of Duke for so many years, right? It's part of the adjustment period at this point. We had TV Teddy on Monday. We had Roger Ayers last night. You have to know that there's some guys in this league that when they show up, that these games are going to be officiated in a inconsistent, poor management kind of way, and you have to adjust to it. And this wasn't something where I feel like that free throw disparity really cost us the game, because it was more the adjustment in it that led to the disparity, I think. And I think UNC saw, hey, if we do this, they're going to call it. Let's just keep doing it, right? They went to Harrison Ingram. They went to Armando Bacot. They said, hey, these guys are going to keep doing this and keep calling fouls on Duke. Why stop? And that's what they did. I think, Jason, one of the things,
right, really quick. To me, it was a little bit indicative of the Tennessee game last year, the game that Duke lost in the NCAA tournament, where one team was older and more physical, and once the refs decided they were going to allow the game to be played on a more physical level, Duke had trouble adjusting to that. And like in the Tennessee game, Tyrese Proctor was the guy who said, okay, I'm just going to step up on offense and take over on offense, and almost got Duke back in the game. Jared McCain tried to do the same thing for Duke this year, but in both games, the physicality made a huge difference in how the style of the game was played, and it was just a style that was not conducive to Duke winning.
So that's the out-toughed part, right, that Jeremy Roach was alluding to. That's the out-tough part. Here's the out-compete part. I said in my preview that for Duke to have a chance to win this game, there's a lot that can happen, but one thing that couldn't happen was that one of Elliot Cadeau, Cormac Ryan, or Harrison Ingram would go off. And well, Harrison Ingram went off. And not only just from three, right? He was 5 for 9 from three. He didn't just have the, the double-double, but it was also his hustle. Like you mentioned, there was a couple, not just one, but several plays where he ended up with the ball in his hand and was able to get points out of it. Not necessarily him, but UNC was able to get points out of every single one of those possessions. They felt like backbreakers every single time that he was involved in a play. And that was the key here, is that Harrison Ingram had the game of his life. And it's all credit to him, but also he found ways. He basically said, hey, they're not worried about me. They're worried about Armando Bacot and RJ Davis. Really, they're worried about maybe stopping, dribble penetration from Elliot Cadeau, which I thought for the most part we did. And at the end of the day, RJ Davis, as you mentioned, was held under his season average. Armando Bacot, he goes off. He gets his 25 points. And we're still thinking, hey, that's fine. If he gets 25, RJ gets 17, we're still in position to win this ball game. We did not account for Harrison Ingram. That's the issue here. And he was able to, just bomb away. Once he got hot, we didn't have an answer for that because that was not in the game plan. It probably wasn't in UNC's game plan either for him to shoot 9 threes and go 5 for 9. But here we are. And I think that was one of the keys here, is that, they had an X factor who, stole the show for the most part.
Yeah.
And he's probably, when they were partying on Franklin State last night, they were probably chanting his name before a lot of others, because he really set the tone for what they were doing offensively. And even in some of these, where we played some good defense, it ended with Harrison Ingram in a corner or on a wing hitting a three. And again, it felt like every time he touched the ball and had an impact on the play, it was a backbreaker for Duke.
So I want to get to one more statistical thing before we get to individual players, because there are going to be 2 individual players that I'm going to take to task. But I'll wait to do that for a second. I want to get to one more stat thing, and that's turnovers. The K-man, David Kerman, who emails us all the time, is a great part of the community that we have here on the DBR podcast. He wrote and he pointed out that Carolina's 19-7 points off turnover margin was more than the margin for the game. Look, Duke had 11 turnovers. That's not terrible. It's not great. It's not terrible. But man, you have to find a way to force UNC into more than 5 turnovers. In credit to them, they played a nearly flawless game, but Duke's defense was part of that. And we just did not do a good job of making them uncomfortable. Again and again and again, Carolina seemed like they were getting what they wanted. I mean, how many layups did we give to Seth Trimble? My goodness, Seth Trimble, hey, look, he's a hustler. He's a good defensive player. He's sort of there. Jalen Blake's, by the way, hasn't played in 3 games. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Blake's hasn't played at all in 3 games. It's kind of interesting. I'm not sure what's happening there. But anyway, Seth Trimble's there. Jalen Blake's. We basically allowed Jalen Blake's to score 10 points against us. He was, and not difficult points. Like, he did nothing but shoot uncontested layups, and he did it again and again and again. It was just, and that was indicative, going back to the turnovers, that was just indicative of Duke not putting Carolina in places where Carolina was uncomfortable with the ball. Turnovers come from being uncomfortable or being super sloppy, which Duke was at times. I mean, my God. Caleb Foster had one pass that was just like, I don't know who he was passing it to, but Cormac Ryan got a layup off of it. It was just terrible. But bottom line is, Duke needs to do better at putting teams in uncomfortable position. Donald, we talked to Jay Billis. We talked in the pregame about how this Duke team is suffering on defense. You have talked extensively about how Duke has to improve their Ken Palm defensive efficiency. They have to be better on defense if they're going to truly be a national title contender. Our defensive, we gave up 90+ points to Carolina. And look, they're a good offensive team, but they're not this good. And that was a very, very frustrating defensive performance for the most part by Duke.
I think another category for me before we get into individuals is we have been shooting very well from beyond the arc lately. And I said, if we want to beat UNC, that has to continue. This, of course, unfortunately, was the game where we did not shoot well from beyond the arc. 5 for 19, 26%. It felt like every single one of those misses were on threes that could have changed the trajectory of the game, right? You hit a couple of threes to close a lead from 12-6 that forces UNC to take a timeout. It forces them to have to adjust to your momentum. And you kind of have that air of, hey, we can do this. We can come back. We can make this work. And every single time, there was a lot of, 5-point, 6-point swings where we'd miss a three and they'd come down and hit a basket. And instead of it being, again, a 8-point ball game or a 7-point ball game, it was a 13-point ball game. And we just could never get, you mentioned we never closed to within like 8 the entire second half. And it just felt like every time we got within 10, we're like, okay, we could hit this three. We're be only down 7. Now that feels like we're in position to strike and really counter. And you'd miss the three. They'd go down, they'd hit a basket, and all of a sudden, again, the lead's back up to 12 or 13. And you just feel like those were a lot of opportunities missed. And you mentioned we had to work hard for a lot of our shots, but I feel like a lot of our threes that we missed that were a little more frustrating were open threes. And it's not something that, quote, we need to work on, because again, I thought leading up to this point, we had been shooting the ball very well lately. It just unfortunately was a regression to the mean type of game in that category.
All right, so I'm going to get to it now. And I want to caveat with this. We do have a platform, Donald. And you and I have a responsibility not to be too reactionary. Because we have people who listen to us, we have a responsibility to be somewhat measured. And frankly, I don't want to be seen as bashing Duke players. All that said, boy, the emails we got about Kyle Filipowski were not kind.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had someone said, oh, he should just declare for the draft right now. And we should get someone who cares to play instead. We had an email that asked if he'd outplayed a quality big man all year. And at first I was like, oh, come on. That's not fair. And then I started going back, looking at Duke's games against really good big men. Having trouble finding a game where Kyle outplayed a quality big man. Not that he hasn't. He's had really good games, but for the most part, they haven't been against guys that you go, oh, that guy's a potential all-conference kind of player. We had an email where someone said he's soft and that Kyle plays with a sense of entitlement. Look, I think those are a little bit overdone. But Kyle Filipowski's in a bit of a funk. He's 2 for his past 16 on 3-pointers. He only has 2 offensive rebounds in his last 3 games. I'm going to repeat that. Kyle Filipowski, who is 7 feet tall and plays close to the basket for the most part, only has 2 offensive rebounds in his past 3 games. He was thoroughly outplayed by Armando Bacot in this game. You and I was talking about the matchups and how interesting the matchups were in this game. And my very last comment in our preview was I said, I just think it comes down. I think the biggest matchup is Bacot and Filipowski. If one guy thoroughly outplays the other one, that team's going to win.
And it's ironic because when we asked Jay Billis that, he mentioned, if you shut down RJ Davis, that's probably the bigger matchup. And it feels like we did that for the most part. Like I can say, Jared McCain versus RJ Davis, edge, goes to Jared McCain, but yeah, down low, it was Bacot. And that proved to be the difference.
Yeah. The Duke Sports Information Department sends out a recap email of every game. And in their recap, they usually, they note the highlights in the game, things like that. In their recap this game, they said, Kyle Filipowski finished with 5 rebounds. That's his 19th game this year with 5 rebounds. Like, that's something to be proud of. He's 7 feet tall. He plays 35 minutes a game. He damn well better get at least 5 rebounds. I mean, come on. You're really praising him for getting 5 rebounds? Kyle Filipowski has got to do better than he has been doing lately. And I'm going to fold this into something else, and then I'll let you go, Donald. Tyrese Proctor was a total non-factor on offense in this game. 1 of 6 from the field, just 2 assists. I don't think I saw him create a nice opportunity for a teammate the entire game. Maybe. I don't recall his 2 assists. Maybe one of them was beautiful. I just don't remember it. Look, he did a nice job. I mentioned he did a nice job on defense on RJ Davis. But if the price of him playing well on RJ Davis was to utterly remove him from the offensive flow the entire game, I'm not sure we made a good trade there. In the pregame, Donald, when we were talking to Jay Billis, I asked him a very specific question about Kyle and Tyrese. I said, are they living up to expectations? I pointed out both these guys were considered potential lottery picks coming into this season. That Kyle Filipowski was a preseason All-American and Tyrese Proctor was the 6th man on the ACC first team. And I said, I don't think either one of them has played to those expectations just far this year. And Jay Billis's response was, maybe the expectations are our fault, not the player's fault. Expectations are what other people think. Jay Billis gave a very player-favored kind of answer, and that's fine. And he's not wrong about that. He deflected. But the reality is that neither of these guys are close to what we expected from them. Duke was a preseason top 3 team. Duke was a preseason national title contender because we figured our freshmen would be better as sophomores. They would be more consistent. They would expand their games. And frankly, I'm still not seeing it. If you look at their stats, look, there are places here and there where they're a little bit better, but there are also places here and there where they're a little bit worse. These guys had been expected to be All-American contenders. They're expected to be lottery picks. And frankly, they have not played that way for the most part, and certainly not in Duke's biggest games this season. And again, I've got a platform, and I got to be careful, but I'm also going to call a spade a spade. And these two guys, Kyle Filipowski and Tyrese Proctor, did not play well enough for Duke to beat UNC. Period. End of story.
I think for me, and we're going back to Kyle Filipowski here. Yeah, we set expectations on him, but that was because of the lack of expectations we had last season and how he delivered, right? Like, we entered last season saying, yo, this guy's probably not even going to start. And not only did he start every single game, but he was one of the best players in the country. And we figured, wow, we get him back for another year. Just imagine how much he's going to improve. And now he has 2 hip, or 2 hip flip is back, right? We have a guy who is operating with no, health issues whatsoever. And it feels like he has struggled to find his flow. And we've talked about whether he plays the 4 or plays the 5. He had a week that you mentioned he was been very bad from beyond the arc lately. And that was coming off of a 2-week stretch where he was hitting everything from behind the arc, right? He was 8 for 8 one week.
Yeah, he's a
8
roller
for 9
coaster
or
when
something
it
like
comes
that.
to 3-pointers. Yeah.
It's a roller coaster. Yeah. And it seems like nothing comes easy for him. But I feel like what hasn't improved is his ability to recognize that and go for that. You mentioned he only has 2 offensive rebounds. One of the things he did the best last year was he'd go for a shot, he'd miss it, but because he was right there and he was taller and would hustle more than everybody else, he would jump up and grab it immediately and put it back in for a tip dunk or for another lay-in. And sometimes he'd even draw the foul doing it. We haven't seen that from him. We haven't seen where he's gone to the glass, laid it up, and put it in a particular position where even if he misses it, the only person who's coming down with it is number 30 in Duke Blue. That just hasn't happened this year that I have seen to the consistency that we had last year. I think also what is not improved is his ability to respond to adversity. You remember last year, that Virginia game, he gets hacked on the last play of the game. He has 0 points in that game. And he responds by saying, hey, I need to play better. I need to play more physical. The ACC is not going to let up on me. And he just absolutely went on a tear for the next 6 or 7 games, all the way up until that Tennessee game, essentially. And this year, his response to adversity has not matched what we saw from him as a freshman. And I think that can go towards everyone on this team. Our response to adversity on this team has not been what is required of a Duke basketball team. That is the fact. The question now is, again, we go back to the post-game press where all of them talked about the lack of energy, the lack of focus, the lack of effort. And John Shire was asked, what do you do to address that? And he just says, it's our responsibility. We have to compete. We have to go back to, take responsibility, coaches, players, everybody, and get back to work. You have to put the work in. And for me, that has been what's missing. The fact that we have slow starts in every single game, the fact that it feels like on the road we come out with just not a level of intensity that is required. There's been 2 games, really, Jason, that we've had that on the road. And what games were they? They were Pitt and they were Virginia Tech. 2 games that I thought we played brilliantly on the road, made it where the game we were up 15 points or something like that early, mid towards first half. And it felt like we were coasting because we had it so easy in that game because the intensity was there. This is a game that if intensity was present in this building, Duke would have won that game. It's very simple, or at least would have been, you mentioned the back and forth affair that it was early on. It at least would have been that. It would have been a game for the ages for everybody, but maybe us in our heart attack medicine or our blood pressure medicine. I think when it comes to Kyle Filipowski and the rest of this team, they need to learn how to come back from this with the energy, the intensity that is required every single time they put on that uniform, because the world will not stop for them. Teams are not going to fold and lay over on them because they feel like they don't have the energy or the effort. We see it with other teams. I joke about how UNC, it seems like everybody seems to roll over for them, but they don't do that for us. And at this point, it does not matter if they do it for other teams. I know they're not going to do it for us. That is the adjustment that has not been made by this basketball team this season. And I think that's what needs to change before Wednesday night.
All right, with that, we're going to wrap up our coverage of this game with our play of the game. Donald, what's your play?
There wasn't a lot, honestly, but the
Yeah.
one I had was in the second half. I think it was like midway through the second half. Jeremy Roach had a great dime to find Mark Mitchell open for a dunk. And I think it was the easiest play that we had all game. We talked about how nothing came easy to us. I thought that was the easiest play we had. And I wonder if we figure out a way to find Mark Mitchell more in those easy plays, find it where, the defense gets lost on Mark Mitchell and Mark Mitchell finds himself into an open space. But I thought that was the best play of the game because it came easiest to us.
There was a play where the score was 20-16 Carolina in the first half, and Jeremy Roach found himself recovering onto Harrison Ingram, who was open in the corner, and Roach forced a really poor three-pointer by Ingram. It was an air ball that Jared McCain caught, raced the other direction. The entire defense came toward Jared McCain, and he found Roach on the wing to take a wide open three-pointer that he buried. I think at that point, Roach had like 10 of Duke's 19 points or 12. He was all the offense, but it made it 20-19. And I felt like at that moment, Carolina had been playing about as well as they could, and Duke had been playing about as poorly as they could. And I was like, we're only down 1 point. And I felt really confident. I felt really good. Didn't go very well from there.
Yeah.
But that was my play of the game. I thought that it was an example of good defense leading to good offense and a easy opportunity for Duke, which we got precious few of in this contest.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, let's move on to player of the week. I think there's only one contender, but go ahead. Tell me who you got for player of the week.
I got Jeremy Roach. He combined for 36 points, 6 assists, 3 rebounds. He shot 60% from 3. And again, against Virginia Tech, I thought he was mesmerizing. And again, I thought he had the best play of the night when he buried that 3. Again, when Virginia Tech was trying to close in, he hit that 3 at the buzzer at the end of the first half, and it felt like Virginia Tech couldn't come back for that. And like you said, against this game, it felt like there was many times during the game where Jeremy Roach was trying to take over this ball game, or at least was attempting to on Duke's side from an offensive standpoint. But I thought he was the player of the week.
Yeah, I'm also going with Jeremy Roach. I was going to say Jared McCain had a really, really nice week. He had 10 rebounds in both games against Virginia Tech and UNC, and he was clearly the best player in the Carolina game. But Jeremy Roach was outstanding in both contests, and he's having the senior season that we all hoped and prayed he would. And it's really been special to watch and enjoy. So yeah, I'm also going with him for our player of the week. All right, Donna, we'll be back in just a couple days to preview the next contest. Blue Devils are back in action this week. And look, coming off a loss, it is very, very important that you play well. Schedule gets a little bit easier here for a little bit. We got 3-game homestand: Notre Dame, Boston College, Wake Forest. All 3 of them teams that you would think Duke should do fairly well against. This team needs to figure some things out, though. So,
Jason, before we get out of here, I just want to let people know, a couple episodes ago, I teased that we were going to have a YouTube channel set up. Well, that YouTube channel, literally 5 seconds, Jason, before we started recording, went live.
Awesome. So
every single episode of the Duke Basketball Roundup you can find on our YouTube channel at DBR Podcast on YouTube. You can go subscribe there. You can, if you're someone who watches videos and listens to stuff on YouTube Music, you can find us on there and add us to your rotation. So that's there. But also, Jason, remember the Home Field Collection just dropped on Friday. DBR Podcast. That's how you save 50% off your order. Go to Home Field Apparel. They have a lot of cool stuff, and I can't wait to get the shirt that I ordered. So that would be cool.
Yeah. By the way, the YouTube channel will not include video of us. It's just the audio.
Not yet, but yeah, I know we've been talking about it. But yes, you will not see our faces just yet. We have to, leave something mysterious for you.
Right. Exactly. By the way, I am going to be in town. I will be in Durham for both the Boston College and the Wake Forest games on Saturday, February 10th and Monday, February 12th. I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to be doing. Probably just meeting up with folks at the Washington Duke, but it's possible I'll try and bring a microphone and chat with a few of you folks out there in the wild as I attend both of those basketball games. We had really hoped that Donald was going to be able to make it down for the Wake Forest game on Monday the 12th. We were going to try and do a live podcast from the WA Duke, but with only one of us there, it doesn't really make sense. We can't do that, right?
I just couldn't make it work. I am trying to get down for the Virginia game, just looking for some tickets for me, my godson, and my best friends, and hopefully I'll make it down for that. But yeah, I was trying to make it down for the at least the Boston College game. Just couldn't make it happen.
All right, but again, we will have a preview prior to that game against Notre Dame on Wednesday, February 7th. Until then, he's Donald. I'm Jason. You can hear them now. Here's the Duke Band. They're live right here. They're behind me in my living room playing. Duke Band, play us out. Take us home.